Videos as tool to correct and rewrite human history. Videos about to the subject related polygonal works could help us overview, understand and rewrite human history, and finally make us recognize and respect any eventual advanced civilization that generated modern humans, us, and left traces and associations in later cultures, marked our history and even our civilization and behavior today. And very importantly, literally marked our modern human DNA with the so important genetic markers. It is the genetic markers and the associations that we of origin for existence will make regular use of to uncover what is not recognized. And as far as we are aware, we are quite unique in doing exactly this. The videos in focus are part of a channel with a somewhat eccentric and unfamiliar name, One-Eyed Giant Building Walls. Despite the unfamiliar name, these for human history key and very important videos most probably prove, or rather could prove, this possibly all by themselves, this by many alternative historians supposed but not recognized advanced civilization or mother civilization, and at the very least create an important and quite unique inventory of to the subject related megalithic sites. In the course of his videos, the author Enrique frenetically classifies and associates, but largely leaves the interpretation to the spectators of his visual, graphic, and often first-hand videos. Graham-Hancock's Advanced Mother Civilization. The problem with uncovering or rewriting history seems to be that nobody, also not Graham-Hancock, even with his ancient apocalypse hypothesis and privileged exposure in the media, like also in Netflix, is able to prove or rather convince the general public that such mother civilization and or advanced civilization was real, and our origin and basis of our culture and economy, and left traces in later cultures as widespread as the Aurignacian culture in Europe and Middle East, Mayans in the Americas and ancient Egyptians in Africa, and also that it still plays a role and also that it was advanced. Graham-Hancock claims the civilization to be from around an event at the very end of the Ice Age, while we of origin for existence consider it as composed of many waves and cycles and to stretch at least from since the explosion of human expansion, around 47,000 years ago, which is much earlier and roughly in the middle of the last Ice Age, and departing from the east as well as the west sides of the Americas, just like Atlantis could be from the Americas, this since it is west of Gibraltar, as it is kind of claimed to be according to Plato. Consensus Mother or Mitochondrial Eve Civilization. Most scientists and consensus detects and recognizes this same explosion of human expansion roughly around 47,000 years ago, but especially consensus claims it to be out of Africa. Ancient DNA disruption. Especially since ancient DNA, out of Africa, is more and more challenged and called from complex to plain improbable by some of our most advanced and renommated scientists. Hancock-Dibble Debate. In fact, for about 1 year there's a feud-like discussion or debate going on between Graham-Hancock, etc. on the one hand, and Flint-Dibble, Stefan Milo, etc. on the other hand. This so-called Hancock-Dibble debate refers to a public and media discussion between author Graham-Hancock, who promotes theories of a lost, advanced Ice Age civilization, and Flint-Dibble, an archaeologist representing mainstream scientific perspectives. Hancock finally disproven by Dibble. The debate took place on Joe Rogan's podcast and was a prominent example of so-called pop archaeology versus so-called professional archaeology conflict. Furthermore, and independent of this debate or feud, nobody seems to be able to prove how old this, or any of the advanced civilization is, or what its people did, and even less who, or what haplogroups or haplotype or culture or continents was responsible for it. Proving mother and advanced civilization is easy. We claim that this is not only possible, but in fact easy when making use of simple scientific tools or associations, including associations related to the here focused on videos and channel. Nevertheless, this is impossible or at least too hard to be convincing without involving DNA, under the form of ancestral markers, haplogroups, etc., and or without associations like with the Aurignacian culture, or archaeological evidence like polygonal works, with the Aurignacian culture being recognized from 47,000 to 41,000 years ago. 47,000 years ago was a key moment. 47,000 years ago is recognized by consensus and scientists as a key moment in human history, and scientists, and especially geneticists, directly link this date of 47,000 years ago, and the following period to the expansion of us modern humans across the globe, and or the consensus out of Africa, and more specifically to the interbreeding between out of Africans with Neanderthals. This outside of sub-Saharan Africa, and surprisingly also outside of Africa, this without being able to point out where and with what Neanderthal group. Involving basic markers. As said, we of origin for existence claim that involving some DNA and some associations, all the above can be known, globally interrelated or interconnected, and even understood. Further, involving DNA and some associations is widely and globally applicable and fun, exactly because you start to see and eventually prove what you did not see before and others go on to not see. Prehistoric wide DNA haplogroups like Q and C clearly affected the whole world, and also like haplogroup are turned over and populated all continents, and the latter surprisingly only as recently as 5,000 years ago. 4,500 years ago was the key moment. In other words, the effective peopling of the planet with modern humans did not take place 47,000 years ago, but as recently as 4,500 years ago, or more correctly between 8,000 and 4,500 years ago. This is unprecedentedly proven by ancient DNA, and on top of this also with tests involving thousands of sequenced ancient DNA, and hundreds of thousands of sequenced modern humans' DNA. Despite it already having been scientifically proven, as few things in this world are proven, consensus and mainstream keep it off, and kind of are hiding it since at least 2014. Much bigger than the Hancock-Dibble public standoff. Obviously, this is something much bigger than the Hancock-Dibble public standoff. Instead of consensus facing off with a non-scientist that is classified by them as a pseudoscientist, in the case of ancient DNA, global DNA testing, associations, and probability, consensus faces off or rather dogmatically suppresses our most advanced techniques, proceedings, scientists, and science. But nobody knows or cares. At least it seems so. This means that nobody effectively cares for science or true history, and only for consensus or status quo, and for the in the sidelines appearing popular and successful narratives. At least it seems so. Nobody is effectively looking for solutions that were provingly practiced in the past and are responsible for the expansion of humans across the world, or in other words for the peopling of the world with modern humans. At least it